Hi, this is Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. Today, I'm broadcasting from Chesapeake, Virginia, live, and sending my message out to YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn. And the message to you is please subscribe to my YouTube channel and give me a like, and also sign up on my Facebook page and give me a like, and give me some comments about today's program. I'm in my studio today with my wife, Gloria.
Welcome, everyone.
And she's going to check the chat room and also to monitor the broadcast. Now, today I'm going to do a plein air demonstration. I videotaped what I did on location about a little over a week ago. And so I'm going to play that tape and show you what I did. Now, I video recorded, I left it at the same speed. I didn't speed it up. I just wanted you to see, number one, I wanted you to see my brush strokes, and also some of the thought pattern and not hesitation, but really observation skills that you have to develop when you're on location. That means to observe the subject and to really study what you're painting. So you'll see those things on the video. And then after the video, I'm going to come back here to the studio, and I'm going to add some final touches, which I think will improve the painting. So let me take you over to all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the video on and let you take a look at that. So I'll be back after the video. This is the view I see when I go to the locks down here at the Great Bridge. And there's a zoom in that I look at. This is the area I'm going to do a plein air painting of. And I was attracted by the shapes and the shadows and the reflections in the water. Here's my individual setup here. And the first thing I do is I always do a pencil sketch. Here I'm sketching out the major composition, the trees, and the locks, which are down there, those white and yellow buildings down at the end in the middle of the scene there is where the locks are. So here I'm sketching in the main subjects or the main objects in the painting. And also the sketching gets me familiar with the subject matter, the size and the shapes, some of the values, and really gets me started. It's really a warm up to the actual painting. So during a plein air adventure, it's always good to do a preliminary sketch to really plan out the configuration and to become familiar with the elements and the sizes and shapes, which every artist should be able to take a look at, becoming familiar with the elements. This also gives me an idea of the values I'm going to apply to the painting. Now I'm going to start working. First of all, I work at the top down, starting with my light washes. In this case, it's the sky blue, and also work into the water. So I'm starting with the light values first. This is cerulean blue I'm using here for the sky, and I'm using a 3/4 inch flat brush from Holbein. And I see a little cloud in the sky, so that white paper I'm leaving there in the white sky color is a little cloud that I see. I'm going to leave a little white paper showing there, just to indicate that there's a cloud formation up there in the sky. It gives a little interest to the scene and so forth. And then I work down to the edge of the trees, and I'm working that sky pattern around the edge of the tree shapes. Take note here, I don't have any pencil lines on my painting paper. I'm really painting this right from sight. So I'm familiar with, I drew the sketch, so I'm familiar with the area, and I'm familiar with the shapes and so forth. So now I'm painting in the negative shapes around some of those elements. Here, the sky, I'm leaving some room there for the trees and so forth. So I'm really doing a little negative painting here. Now, continuing now with that same color, I'm going to move down into the water. That's a light value also. So I'll cover the light values first. So I'll start down here at the base, just below the locks area of the buildings. Start putting in some of the water color, which will be the same color. Start out with a cerulean blue, the light blue of the sky, which is reflected in the water. And I'm using the same brush technique and just painting it down. I'm using horizontal brush strokes here because the water is always to me a horizontal motion, and I'm adding a little bit of darker paint here. As I come down, the sky is always darker at the top, while the water is always a little bit darker as you come forward. That'll give a little depth in the painting. Every time you have a flat land mass, in this case it's the water mass, you're going to have a light value and a dark value showing the near and the far portions of that particular mass. So it's dark on the forward edge and light in the back edge. So the forward part of the water is going to be a little bit darker than the area back toward the locks. And I'm painting around those reflection patterns that I see in the trees. So here, there's no drawing on the paper. I'm just painting what I see and putting the colors in that I interpret here. Some light blue to match the color, and the light blue to match the color of the water. It was a very bright daylight this time of day when I did this. You see the light from the camera didn't pick up the lightness of the sky because the lens was focusing on the white paper. So that's sometimes a camera will fool you about what color and what values there are based on the amount of lighting that's available and where the lighting is located. Here I'm adding a little bit of light green now. I'm blocking in the colors now. This here I'm using a little bit of green number 1 with the same brush, the 3/4 inch flat brush from Holbein. And I'm putting in that tree mass here on the left side, which is right in front of me. I'm starting with a light color. So I'm putting the light values in first. So that light green will be the shape of that tree mass on the left-hand side of the painting. Using a little bit of vertical strokes and just blocking in the color to cover in that tree mass on the left-hand side with a light green color. Here I'll be working on the edges of those trees, getting the edges as I define it a little bit further on in the painting. Now I'm using the same brush and a little darker green. I'm going to get that dark green on the right-hand side. The tree is a little bit darker in the background. A little bit more shadows back there, and the light isn't hitting them as directly. So there's more shadows. So it'll be a little bit darker trees on the right-hand side in the background. Now again, I don't have any pencil lines to follow. I'm really observing the shape, and I'm observing the sizes of what I see here on the landscape. And so I'm painting that right from what I see. Again, the drawing helps me a little bit getting familiar with that area, but now I'm using the flat brush and the vertical brush strokes, and I'm capturing that shape as I see them here on the landscape. So this is an observation skill of looking at something, having a brush in your hand loaded with paint, and then following the edges and transcribing what you see onto your paper. And this is really a best part about Plein Air, is that you're painting what you see. You're capturing the shape, you're capturing the color, and really later on adding in the values. So this is like a middle value right now in the background. It'll be a little bit darker before I finish. Again, I'm following the edges of that background tree mass, observing it, and then painting what I see. Now I'm coming down close to those buildings down there, into the, and on top of those crepe myrtles. I'm also coming down. Those crepe myrtles are out in bloom now. You see the purple flowers, or the actually pink and purple flowers. You can see on the crepe myrtle trees. So now I'm painting the shape now down next to that buildings down there in the background. That's where the locks are located, and that's the command center. That yellow building is the command center for the locks. That's the one where all the controls that controls the locks opening and closing, and that's where the operators stand, and that's where the operators look out the windows. Adding a little bit of darker color here in the background, just to add a little bit more texture to those tree mass. Still using the same 3/4 inch flat brush, and I'm blocking in that color now around that building location down there. To continue to block in the green color around that the buildings down there. Now I'm using a smaller brush, the number 8 round. I'm going to go paint more detail around that building shapes. So for a smaller area, smaller space, such as those buildings, I'm using a smaller brush. And those far off background trees, way off in the background, they're going to be a little bit cooler in color, a little bit lighter in value. As you go further back into the landscape, the colors get cooler and lighter. So those faraway trees way off in the background, behind those buildings, and behind that large tree mass on the right, is going to be lighter and a cooler color. And I add a little more blue to that green. So I use that number 8 round brush, smaller, and I'm going to be painting detail around those building edges. I'm just blocking in the colors right now, just blocking in those shapes. Again, I don't have anything drawn in, so I'm observing what I see, and I'm painting around those shapes as I see them. Now continue on around the edge of the building with the small brush. I'm capturing the roof line down there. There's a roof line at an angle and shape. So there's no lines. I have no lines drawn on the paper, so I'm really painting negative painting around those shapes. I picked up a little upper on my paintbrush, a small paintbrush, and I'm painting in the crepe myrtle flowers on those trees, and I'm blocking in the location. I'm blocking in the shape and location of those blossoms. This gives me an indication of where they are, how big they are, and so forth. So painting Plein Air, I'm getting the size and the shape and location of where things are. So here I'm blocking in those colors that I observe. Now, some of those will be colored in later on, but right now, at least I have the colors plotted into my painting area, the location, the size, and the approximate shape that they're in. Now I got some burnt sienna on my brush. I'm putting in that bulkhead which runs along the edge of the waterway. And again, you can see the perspective line here. As you go forward, the line slopes up from the side. From the right side, the angle slopes up toward the middle of the painting. This gives you linear perspective. This line slopes up because it's below the horizon line. And again, I'm observing the size and the shape and the location of that particular element. Right now I'm blocking in where it is, locating how big it is, locating its shape. So this is a good lesson here in linear perspective, where the lines will slope upward toward the horizon line. Here I'm checking the location, I'm checking the size. Also checking the angle. Here I'm using my fingers and my thumb to locate the proportion of, comparing the size in the foreground compared to the size in the background. That's the way to scale a particular object. As further away it gets, it'll get smaller, so you use something in order to gauge, to compare the size. I use the end of a paintbrush or my finger or thumb to do that. So isn't that a good lesson in linear perspective? I'm going to pick up a little bit of yellow-orange in my brush. I'm going to paint in that yellow-orange building there, which is the control center for the locks. I want to locate that, at least put it in position where it is in the painting. It becomes part of the focal point or impact area. And now I'm using the round brush, the number 8 round brush, and for detail, I'm going in with some burnt sienna on the round brush, and now I'm putting in detail. These are the wood parts of the lock, which is the bulkhead and the gate elements that move to open up the locks for the boats to go through. So I'm painting in the position and the location and the size of that particular element on the locks. So I'm using a round brush because it's a small area. And there's no pencil line, so I'm really observing, and I'm painting what I see. The best exercise in plein air is the idea of observation. The power of observation is very important to be able to scope out something and to recognize and to paint something that's similar or something that looks like what you are looking at. It doesn't have to be exact, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it can be just a representation of what you're seeing, what you're looking at. It can be interpreted to someone of what you're painting. Now here I'm taking a little bit of the green number 1, and I'm putting in some green grass over on the right-hand side on the landscape. And this particular area here runs horizontal, so that really marks the horizon line. And here I'm marking the horizon line with my brush. I'm observing the horizon line, and it's level. And so the green grass is the level pattern in the painting. And that helps the perspective look of the wood that runs along the edge of the water. And now I got some light color. I got yellow ochre and some burnt sienna on my brush. You're still using a number 8 round brush with a fixed point. And I'm painting in the trunks of the crepe myrtle trees. And these line the edge of the waterway. And these are very picturesque. It makes a beautiful setting here with the crepe myrtle trees, with the flowers blooming out on the trees themselves, and the shape of the trees. It's a very beautiful setting. A lot of people come here for picnics and just for visitation. And the waterway is a lot of fun to watch the boats go through also. So here I'm gauging the size of the trunks and the position of the trunks here in this part of the landscape. The trees get larger as they come closer, and they get smaller as we move back into the center part of the painting. Again, linear perspective will make the trees look a little smaller as you go back, to give the good impression of depth. And now I'm making a little bit of darker green now under the bottom limbs of those crepe myrtle trees. So I'm putting in a little bit of color here, just to limit the bottom of those, just to define and block in the bottom shapes of those trees. Again, at this point, I'm still blocking in. I'm blocking in shapes. I'm blocking in some of the colors, and also location of everything. And now with a flat brush, I'm going to begin putting in the first look at the reflection in the water. So I'm using some light green. I'm using a light color, light value green color, just to block in that area of where the reflection is in the water from those trees. And I'm using a horizontal stroke because the water is flat. So using a horizontal stroke to put the paint in also gives me the impression of the surface. There's not many ripples or movement in the water today. So using a flat stroke to lay in the paints. So I'm blocking in with a light color, light green color, just blocking it in. So my first stage usually is to block in the colors and the shapes using a light color. And because I don't have any drawing to go by, I'm using my observation of the area to plot out these particular shapes and sizes. Starting again, I'm going to put a little darker colors now over here on the left. I'm using a side stroke with a flat brush. Correction, a round brush. Use a round brush, number 8 round, filled with paint, and I use a side stroke, and I use a scrumbling stroke technique. And this gives me the texture and the appearance of leaves on these trees. So this is a stroke I discovered a while back, and it's one of my favorite strokes I use for trees, especially these ones that are up close, because they're more defined. The leaves are more defined and are more descriptive. So this is a way to put in texture on something that's up close. I'm moving the brush around. I'm painting sideways, up and down. I'm using a scraping motion with the side of the brush. Now the edges of these trees hanging over the water is very important. So this brush stroke gives me a realistic look of branches on this particular tree mass. So you can see moving that brush sideways, up and down, and around. Different ways to apply the paint to give it a textured tree look. And that's all. We're painting a shape, but we're painting it in a way that it can be interpreted for whatever you're painting. In this case, I want it to look like a tree, and it's up close. The colors, I've got some lighter green colors because it gets a lighter green comes forward, so I got more yellow in the forward parts of the tree. And as you go back into the tree mass, it's a little darker with a little more blue in the mix. So a change of color, a change of brush stroke. And these are things you can practice in plein air. Plein air is a good way to practice brush strokes and a good way to practice color combinations and what colors make the best combinations in a particular area. So a plein air painting is almost like a laboratory. It's a good way to experiment different ways of painting a particular subject. I find this a very effective way, especially these branches hanging over the edge here. The edge of the branch, the edges are very important to show that it's a tree hanging out over the limbs are hanging out over the water. And the darker color shows you the shadows that are inside the leaf structure. So this would be a good brush stroke to practice if you're going to do trees in a landscape that are up close or ones you want to define in a particular area of a painting. Now I'm getting down close to the bottom here, which is it's in the shadow area of this tree at the bottom. So it's a little darker. And also there'll be a little reflection in the water at this point. And indicating here a little bit of reflection in the water with a little lighter color at the base of that tree mass. Again, I'm still blocking in colors and shapes. Here, adding a little darker here to show the shadow at the base of that tree mass, which is along the edge of the water. Now I'm taking that same color, a little darker, and I'm using the same brush stroke, and I'm putting in some color in behind the crepe myrtle trees. I'm defining the edge of the crepe myrtle trees, the top edge. So I'm doing a little negative painting. I'm painting around or behind those crepe myrtle trees with that green background color to define that tree line of the crepe myrtle trees. And I got a little bit of reflection here in the water. So I'm just indicating here, again, blocking in a little bit of color here in the water from that yellow-orange building. And it's much better to do this while you're on location, to plot these areas down. I would call this a block in, just to indicate where things are and to get the shape down and the colors that are there. So blocking in these shapes and where they are is the most important part of plein air painting. It's the observation, and it's capturing the shapes and capturing the colors, capturing some of the values. Yeah, putting a little bit of yellow into the reflection, a little bit of green into reflection, because the green grass is also reflected into the water. Adding a little more color to the bottom of those trees, a little bit of shadow color. And blocking in that shape that I have a good idea of where those trees are located. Having a photograph to follow is okay for some detail, but there's nothing better than painting this subject on location where you can observe and actually paint what you see and also experience how you feel about that particular subject. Now I'm putting a little bit of green into the tree mass of those crepe myrtles. Just a little bit. Just to indicate that there's a little bit of greenery mixed in with that pink and purple color. Now I'm going to go back in the studio and do a little bit of addition. In the building definition, what I did here was I added more darker greens behind those buildings, and I defined the building edges a lot better with the green. And then here in the bulkhead wood, I took a darker color and I put in the actual locks wood and then the edge of the waterway. And then finally, I put in some of the darker reflection. And you can see here and some of the details on the building. Got windows in the building and a little bit more definition on the edges of the reflection. Okay, the biggest lesson in that particular demonstration is observation skills. The camera does not always pick out the details that you want to follow and that you want to paint. So absolutely, observation of what you're painting and being able to capture that on a sketch or actually in a painting is very important. A photograph will give you a reference and it'll give you some ideas of some detail. But unless you're right there painting or drawing right there on location, you're going to miss a lot of the important steps. So I think that's a very important observation there to show you what my thought process was and what it takes to put in some of the actual details. Now I want to take you over to my overhead camera, and I'm going to work a little bit more on the painting just to show some final touches. Okay, this is the actual, again, picture of the actual photograph, which I used a little bit for referencing. But that's the scene as I saw it on location. And actually, I did a close-up shot. I zoomed in. I did a close-up shot of the actual building, so you can see all the detail there. And a lot of that detail is not necessary when you do a painting. But I wanted to show you here that you can get caught up in the detail for some of the fine points. But I want to use this reference photograph here a little bit to show basically mainly the reflections. And there's my value study. That's a sketch I did on location, and then I added the values in there. But I think the perspective line of the bulkhead, the low row of trees, the location of the buildings, and of course these dark trees back here and the trees along here, and the reflection in the water. So this is the painting. This is the painting you saw at the end of the video. But what I want to do is I'm going to tone down this little area over here. I think all this white paper I want to tone down, and I want to bring some reflections down here on the building into the water, and a little bit of the building over here into the water. Okay, so I always have a little test sheet here. I'm going to mix up some paint here. I'm going to those crepe myrtle trees. I painted them in here with a little bit of opera, but I'm going to put a touch of peacock blue in with that. I want to tone that down just a touch. Still gonna be red, but I want to have a little more purple to that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to paint over this whole section. We'll leave some highlights. So I'm painting over that whole section. I'll knock down that white area, but I'll leave some highlights around because I want a little bit of sparkle over here in these trees. To tone down the white paper, especially along the border over here next to the edge of the painting. I want the eye to go into the into the back of the painting. Okay, now the next area, let me go back and let that dry a little bit before I may touch a little bit. I want to get the trees maybe a little darker in the background. The reflections, I'm going to use a little bit of this deep yellow or yellow deep color. And I'm going to bring this color down into this area, showing the reflections of that building. But also I'm going to bring down some other colors, a little bit of the green from the trees, mixed in a little bit of Booker's green, mixed in with just a little bit of ultramarine blue. And then I'm going to take this small brush and I'm going to take a little bit of those colors. I think what I'll do is, well, here's how you neutralize the color. This is deep yellow or yellow deep. And I'm going to put a little bit of blue mixed in with that. Add a little bit of blue to that. I don't want to make it green, but I want to just tone it down. And then I'm going to take that color, I'm going to come across here. And just what I'm doing is kind of smearing up that area so it looks like a reflection. And over here on this area, take a little bit of this green and bring this down. Reflections are you paint them vertically. Because the light from the object is being reflected downward vertically. Okay, now the last touch I'm going to do, I'm going to take the flat brush, 1/2 inch flat. I'm going to take a little bit of darker green, ultramarine blue mixed in with Hooker's green, and I'm going to go back here and I'm going to put a little more dark value behind these trees, just a little bit more. That'll bring that color in a little bit more contrast, adding more contrast on the side over here. Then I'll take the brush and move that up in a way, kind of blend it into the background color that's already there. But I want to emphasize the edge of that trees, those crepe myrtles a little bit more, but a little bit darker edge against that nice little purple or pink. And I just take a damp brush and then I smooth out that value. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. Those were just a few more touch-ups. I just knocked down the white paper over here on the trees, and little reflections in the water, and a little bit darker valley behind the trees there. Now let's go ahead and put a mat around this. Put a white mat with a green border on the inside. I think first of all, what I should do is take the tape off. And one more piece. Okay. Get that tape off, make the edges a little bit cleaner looking, and then put the mat back on. Okay, and there's the finished painting. Let me take it back to the main camera. All right, so that finishes up the plein air, and I think the lessons there I showed you today was observation skills are very important, and the only way to practice that is to go out and actually draw or paint outdoors on location, and observe the surroundings, and then paint it and draw it, and then I think you have a much better success of what the object looks like and how it turns out as far as an actual piece of art. Well, I hope you enjoyed today, and I'd like to get comments from you as usual. Maybe comments and give me some thumbs up from Facebook, and a like and a thumbs up from YouTube, and also LinkedIn. So I'll be back again next week on Thursday. So don't forget to subscribe and stay in touch. And I'll see you next Thursday at 2 o'clock.